Welcome to today's Explainer. If you are as fascinated as I am by the creators who literally shape the world of live performance, well, you are in for an absolute treat. Today, we're rediscovering the extraordinary partnership of George and Ira Gershwin. We're stepping back into a world of pure American sparkle to look at two brothers who quite literally revolutionized the stage.
So, here's the big question we are setting out to answer today. How exactly did two brothers change the sound of Broadway forever? I mean, how do you take the bubbly, lighthearted form of musical comedy and elevate it into a deeply sophisticated art form?
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Gershwin Brotherhood, move into defining the 1920s sound, cover the girl-crazy explosion, their groundbreaking Pulitzer win, their masterpiece Porgy and Bess, and finally wrap up with their enduring legacy.
All right, Act 1, the Gershwin Brotherhood. Let's look at the fascinating dynamic of music versus lyrics. You know, the real magic of this partnership is all about their distinct but perfectly complementary talents. You've got George, he was the bold, incredibly inventive, and endlessly curious composer, and then you have his brother Ira, the witty, elegant, and masterful lyricist. They were quite literally two sides of the same brilliant coin. When you smash those two forces together, you get the legendary Gershwin sound. We're talking about a completely revolutionary blending of classical technique, the infectious pulse of jazz rhythms, and the driving narrative of Broadway storytelling. Together, they didn't just entertain a passive audience, they completely shifted the trajectory of American musical theater, giving it this entirely new, distinctly American voice. Moving into Act 2, defining the 1920s sound through their bubbly musical comedies. Now, the 1920s was a decade just bursting with modernity. There was this massive hunger for fresh, energetic sounds. And you can see a really clear escalation in their artistic ambition across the years, starting with their early 1924 revue, Lady Be Good, right through to the monumental shift in 1935 with Porgy and Bess. They were just constantly pushing boundaries. Let's pause and look at some of the standard-defining work that emerged from those early years. Their 1924 hit Lady Be Good starred Fred and Adele Astaire, and it introduced the world to fascinating rhythm. I mean, just think about that title for a second. It tells you everything you need to know about George's daring rhythmic instincts. Then from the 1926 show OK, we get Someone to Watch Over Me. Ira's brilliant lyrics stand entirely on their own as beautiful, tender pieces of poetry. They were taking these bubbly comedies and injecting them with real emotional depth and harmonic sophistication. Act 3 brings us to the girl-crazy explosion, a major turning point in 1930. So Girl Crazy didn't just succeed, it completely exploded. It introduced the world to the phenomenal Ethel Merman. And here's an anecdote that brilliantly captures the sheer theatrical drama of the era. Ethel Merman held a note so incredibly long on opening night that the orchestra literally had to stop and wait for her. It's such a vivid reminder of the vocal power and sheer excitement that defined a Gershwin show. The musical form was growing up fast, and the talent was rising right there to meet it. And just think about the list of legendary standards that came out of this one single production. I Got Rhythm, Embraceable You, But Not For Me. Can you imagine sitting in an audience and hearing all of these for the very first time in a single evening? It's mind-blowing. It really emphasizes the incredible volume of hits they could produce all at once. That is the true Gershwin effect.
Act 4. Satire wins the Pulitzer. This is where we see their real intellectual daring.
They achieved an incredible first here. The brothers turned their attention to political satire with a show called Of the I Sing. It was super modern, poking fun at elections, political promises, and just the overall absurdity of American politics. And guess what? It made history as the absolute #1, the very first musical ever to win the Pulitzer Prize for drama. The grand takeaway from this era? Well, it's that musical theater can be both highly entertaining and intellectually daring. Ira's razor-sharp, clever lyrics were perfectly matched with George's incredibly sophisticated yet deeply playful score. They proved once and for all that a musical absolutely didn't have to leave its brain at the stage door just to be a hit. Act 5. The Porgy masterpiece, the creation of the American folk opera.
In 1935, we arrive at the absolute climax of their ambition, Porgy and Bess. Now, this wasn't your traditional Broadway musical. It was an American folk opera. Just look at the sheer audacity of the musical ingredients George blended together here. He took classical orchestration, layered it with raw jazz and blues rhythms, and then wove in American spirituals. He created this deeply unified sound that was completely ahead of its time. It required immense artistic courage.
And the songs that emerge from this masterwork, they're some of the most famous in the entire world. Summertime, It Ain't Necessarily So, Bess You Is My Woman Now. With lyrical co-crafting by DuBose Hayward alongside Ira, these deeply human, poetic songs didn't just stay confined to the stage. As the sources note, they are now permanently, beautifully woven into the very fabric of American music.
Which brings us to our final act, an enduring Broadway legacy and the immortal standards they left behind.
This number hits hard. 38. That is the tragically young age at which George Gershwin passed away. It's a really heavy emotional punch when you realize that everything we've just discussed, the shifting of the musical theater landscape, the staggering volume of hit standards, the creation of an American folk opera, all of it was accomplished in such a heartbreakingly short amount of time. He fully reshaped American music before he even reached 40.
But the story doesn't end there. It really doesn't. Ira continued writing for years afterward, always honoring their unique musical language. And their influence echoes so powerfully today, directly inspiring legendary composers from Leonard Bernstein to Stephen Sondheim. The Gershwins helped define exactly what American musical theater could be. They left a legacy that still fuels modern Broadway writers today. Literally every time one of their shows is revived or a standard is sung, that legacy lives on.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. Since their immortal standards continue to be revived and their structural innovations are still felt to this very day, what boundaries will the next great American musical break? Who is going to be the next to take the tools of the stage and completely reinvent the sound of a generation? I really hope revisiting the brilliance of George and Ira Gershwin inspires you to keep listening, keep analyzing, and keep exploring. Because, my friends, the curtain never really falls on great storytelling.